promising to either address or look at or do something about these insane laws, and nothing ever gets done. I see a pattern forming here.
What do you think is going to happen in your case?
Well, I'm optimistic. I think we'll get back here in the spring session. The government won't have raised a finger, won't have done anything, or else they'll have introduced a horrible bill that will result in many people going to jail for unpaid fines. And either way, either they'll do nothing or they'll do something bad. Either way, we'll be back here with the same complaints.
So what hardship has it been for you to get here and to have it postponed?
My name is David Malmo-Levine. I'm self-represented on trafficking charges. The name is spelled Malmo-Levine. Sorry?
I'm sorry, on the hardship that it's been for you to get here in the first place and to come back again.
I don't like flying, and it's costing the movement, the re-legalization movement, tons of money to get everybody out here and do this. So it's not easy, but we'll be back here. We'll be back here whatever the cost is.
So some people would say, you know, here the government is considering this. Why wouldn't you be happy that the government is looking at passing the legislation that they've said that they would? Is it because it doesn't go far enough to what you want?
Well, imagine yourself not as a pot smoker or pot dealer. Imagine yourself as a homosexual. And instead of the laws against sodomy being criminal, they give you a fine instead. And you want to open up a gay bar, and that's your complaint. Imagine if the court said, well, you know, the government's looking at reducing sodomy from a criminal offense to a fine. Does that satisfy you? What would your answer be? You'd say, no, I want to talk about the real issues here. Should we get punished at all? That's the real issue here. Should growers, dealers, and users of cannabis suffer any punishment whatsoever? Should cannabis traffickers be treated any differently than coffee bean traffickers? That's what I want to find out.
Why do you think that you should have constitutional rights?
Well, Section 7 and 15 are there to protect harmless people. And I think that not all cannabis growing and dealing and use is harmless, but all proper growing and dealing and use is harmless. And I think I can demonstrate that to the court.
What would satisfy you?
Well, I want all the same rights and privileges as coffee bean dealers. That's what it would satisfy me. Complete re-regulation, re-legalization, and some minimal regulations on quality control, the separation of hard and soft drugs like they do in Holland, so we can take advantage of that. And, you know, no impaired driving. We'll maintain the offense of impaired driving, and all the community concerns could be addressed with education and reasonable regulations.
Are you 31? Is it
I'm 31, yes.
Any final words? Any final words?
Any final words? Man, justice delayed is justice denied. But we're going to come back and wow them.
You have faith?
That's right. I'm so pretty. They're just scared of us. They don't want to hear us speak. Don't worry, the fight is on. In 3 or 4 months' time, we're going to be back here at the Supreme Court of Canada. And we're going to make them wish they never made these laws illegal in the first place. We're going to make them wish they just let the happy, hungry, relaxed people alone. Because I've been to Holland. I've been to the Promised Land. Enough of that. Hello, welcome to another edition of High Society. My name is David Malmo-Levine, and I'm one of the appellants at the Supreme Court that you saw there in that last clip. And I just wanted to tell you, it sucks having to go back again and again and again. It's been adjourned for about 1 million times now. But there is an upside to it. The upside is that we hope to get 2 days instead of 1, so we won't be as rushed, and we'll get our full hour instead of having to settle for 40 or 45 minutes each. And we'll be able to discuss decrim a little bit more in depth, and I think it needs to be discussed. The Supreme Court delayed this constitutional challenge to 3 cases, Clay, Caine, and Malmo-Levine, basically because they wanted to hear the debate over decrim. Now, for me, decrim is worse than no change at all. I don't see it any better, because I think a lot of us will start getting fines that weren't getting fines, and a lot of people will go to jail for not being able to pay their fines or get their license taken away or something ridiculous like that. And it could evolve into a system much like they have in Singapore, where you get urine tests and community service or slavery, whatever you want to call it, and group therapy and huge fines for their possession of cannabis or other stronger substances. And I just think it's an affront to autonomy. We don't need it. So let me just review a little bit of the press that came out of this situation and the reports that came out of Parliament. Now, this is the Senate report. It's actually about 5 times as big as this. This is just a summary. And the senators did a really good job of looking at the history of cannabis and such. And they made some pretty bold recommendations, but they screwed some things up. They did recommend drug courts. And I don't see why we should need any of the present drug laws, much less have whole courts reserved for them. This is the new report, the one that just came out. And they have a pretty good minority report in it, written by Libby Davies, who basically criticized all the horrible recommendations in the report. But the bad news is that they recommendation 28 was the committee recommends continued support for existing drug treatment court pilot projects, and if indicated by evaluation outcomes, the committee further recommends permanent funding of those courts with support for additional sites. So they want to expand drug courts. Then they want recommendation 33. The committee recommends that Correctional Service Canada continue to promote abstinence as its overriding treatment objective. And recommendation 34. The committee recommends that Correctional Service Canada undertake as a pilot project the establishment of 2 federal correctional facilities reserved for offenders who wish to serve their sentence in a substance-free environment with access to intensive treatment and support. So basically drug-free jails, special, extra intrusive drug-free jails. Yuck, oh. And then you get to the Chapter 9 cannabis recommendations on page 140, and it recommends, the committee recommends that the possession of cannabis continue to be illegal and that trafficking in any amounts of cannabis remain a crime. That was recommendation 40. Recommendation 41 is, the committee recommends that the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Health establish a comprehensive strategy for decriminalizing the possession and cultivation of not more than 30 grams of cannabis for personal use. Now, keeping in mind, they're weighing the whole plant here. So 30 grams of cannabis is what? Like a gram of dried plant matter if you're lucky. This strategy should include 1. Prevention and education programs outlining the risks of cannabis use, and in particular, the heightened risk it poses to young persons, as if it poses an extra risk to young persons. I think their bodies can handle it a little bit better myself. That's just what I believe. Of course, the second recommendation, or the second strategy recommendation, is the development of more effective tools to facilitate the enforcement of existing criminal code prohibitions against driving while impaired by a drug. And finally, somebody used the impairment word rather than the under the influence term. And I think they should be focused on reducing impaired driving. But, of course, through impairment testing, not through making us pee or giving blood samples or any of those other intrusive, non-impairment focused methods of addressing that concern. So just to review, check this out. I guess the only rag in Ottawa, the only right-wing, silly newspaper in Ottawa is this Ottawa Sun. And look at, if I can just give you a little close-up shot of the quality of the weed they're smoking there in Ottawa. They're calling that medicinal. I call it industrial. Anyway, those poor bastards out in Ottawa having to smoke that swag.